Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
I was 12 years old back in 1980 when PBS aired a series of episodes under the name Cosmos, hosted by American astronomer and astrophysicist Carl Sagan. Now, this was 30 years ago. And I only remember a few things about watching Cosmos. For the first time, I remember the special effects were pretty impressive. I mean, considering it was public television and it was 1980, and you know, a lot of it was kind of Doctor Who, but I mean, for the time, it was pretty impressive. And there was a kind of poetry about the show that I really wasn't used to. I mean, most science-based shows were pretty clinical, pretty dry. You know, they're filled with facts and with information that exactly moved you. You know, the information was there, the data was there. It didn't exactly blow your skirt up, you know. You're like, oh, that's nice. Next, turn the page. I remember Carl Sagan's delivery. It sort of became a punchline for a great many people. We've all heard the riffs on the whole, you know, billions and billions thing from the impersonators. Nobody got it right, by the way. The biggest thing I remember about Cosmos back in 1980 is the fact that I watched those episodes within the boundaries of the religious perspective. Now, I was encouraged as a young child to filter out anything said about evolution or the Big Bang. I don't remember specifics, but I remember there was always kind of a parental presence there. There was always someone kind of there just to make sure that if somebody said something about evolution or the Big Bang or what have you, that someone was there to say, no, that's all just, you know. And so it was immediately discounted like that. I was encouraged to filter out anything said about those things. Or filter it through, you know, my God glasses, so to speak. It was almost like someone learning the opposing point of view in a debate so you could better prepare to argue against it. You weren't really open to new ideas. What you were listening for were the cue cards of the opposing opinion so that you could then counter it. It was a strategic thing. Not once did it occur to me to actually receive and absorb and digest and test these amazing claims about a universe billions of years older than the Garden of Eden. I was just a kid. But even at the age of 12, my mind had already been made up. You know, this is the convenience of being young and idealistic and having information sort of spoon-fed to you. It is what it is, what it is, what it is. This is truth, this is fact, this is absolute. And when you're a child, the world of absolutes is very comforting. Black and white, right and wrong. There is no gray. God is good, devil bad. This is the boundaries that, you know, these are the boundaries that I remember living in. My mind had already been made up. I was 12. How can you have your mind made up about anything? Of course the Big Bang was a joke. The Big Bang. Just sounds funny to say it like that. Of course the universe was created by an invisible floating being. And so was humankind. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. That was the truth. Of course it was the truth. I wonder how much different my own perspective might have been had I watched Cosmos and read any, you know, secular science textbook without the subjective religious point of view. I only truly discovered the life work and the legacy of Carl Sagan more than 10 years after the guy died. You know? I mean, talk about coming late to the party. And at that point in my life, I was looking at things differently. His perspectives were not filtered and strained and washed out and distorted by religion. Carl Sagan was so good at sort of translating the wonder of what we know and of what we don't know into this journey of the imagination, you know? he was one of the few scientists who sort of captured the mind, but he also grabbed the heart. I feel the same way about the work of the late Stephen Jay Gould. There's something about how these guys, when they would speak about the universe we live in and our place in it, that somehow it just stirred you up. You'd see the light in their eyes. They would express with gesture and voice their own awe at being this tiny, tiny, tiny but valuable part of an incredible, vast universe. And I sense the same kind of tone in the video for which I stole the title to this podcast. YouTube's Phil Hellenes' Science Saved My Soul. A 15-minute piece that is not afraid to prompt inspiration, to dare us to just get stirred up, to feel awe as we begin to understand our place in the grand scheme of things. I'm actually waiting for Phil to be able to get through on my switchboard. We had a little bit of a technical glitch. It's been kind of a trying morning for Phil. I spoke to him an hour ago. I guess his computer monitor died, rushed off to someone else's home to make contact with me, went back with hopefully a monitor fix. Now he's rushing to try to get in through to the switchboard. I do welcome your calls as well. And if you have a question or comment for me or Phil or both, I welcome those. Or if you have a comment about how science has impacted your life, how your perspective of science may have changed. Maybe you started out as a religious person. Maybe you started filtering science through that prism of superstition, and then you discovered it was so much better without it. Maybe you have another story, maybe an example of some other science-based thing going on. Is it in a classroom? Was it in a church? Few things are as ham-handed as watching the church deal with issues of science. When you start with God at the beginning of the argument, when you start by saying that all of these little tiny magical fantastic stories must be true, and let's go out and then find science that buttresses those stories and supports those opinions and fantasies, that's a real stretch. Let me start by going to the phones while I'm trying to get Phil here on the line. Hi, who's this? 254, who's this?
Alec. Hello.
What's going on, Alec? What do you have for me?
Not very much. I'm just very glad you mentioned Carl Sagan, because he's a very big idol of mine. Because living in rural Texas, you don't really get too much exposure to science, and it was thanks to Carl Sagan's Cosmos that I went from kind of a light, as you said before on your show, social Christian, to kind of a doubting all the craziness. Because even as 9, 10-year-old, you begin to wonder, what Mr. Sagan's saying doesn't really match up with magical floods and big bangs. So,
how old are you? Are you 20s, 30s, 40s?
I'm 13, sir.
Well, how did you stumble upon Cosmos at the age of 13? Did you find it on YouTube, or was it the rebroadcast? I know they sort of refit it and represented it recently.
A few years ago on the Science Channel, they had a long, maybe a year or so, where they played the show just about every week.
Yeah, I think they went through and did some updates and actually sort of represented it for a whole new generation. I'm so excited to hear that you stumbled upon Cosmos because they sort of brought it back. Thanks so much for the call, Alec. And again, did you have a question or comment for Phil himself when I get him on the line?
No, sir.
Thank you so much. I really have a love-hate relationship with Blog Talk Radio. I've had some people send me messages, and they say, the audio sucks. And, of course, I have to agree. One thing about Blog Talk Radio is it allows me a number of options. The interface is pretty good. It allows me to connect easily with people all over the world. So from an interface point of view, it's a pretty good resource. The challenge I have is that there are little things like this where I know Phil's trying to get through to the switchboard via Skype, and we're having an issue, and it's difficult to navigate those issues. The second thing is that the audio quality is dubious at best. 8-bit, 16K mono. It is so frustrating to not be able to offer something that's a little bit cleaner. And so as I wait for the switchboard to open up here, I'm going to continue to move on. Phil, as soon as I see your name up here, I promise I'm going to stop everything and hit the phones. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. It is an inexact science. It isn't like I have an FM tower and a direct feed and a Gentner box where I can pull the phones in. Essentially, we're at the mercy of doing this via the web. 336, hi, who's this?
Hi, good morning, sir. This is Pedro. How you doing? From North Carolina. Greensboro,
Pedro,
North
I appreciate
Carolina.
your call. Very quickly, what do you have for me?
I just want to encourage some people to go to YouTube and subscribe to Why Evolution is True channel, because plenty information about evolution in science. It's one of the best channels so far on YouTube. I was inspired by Richard Dawkins, Carl Sagan, many more. Even Thunderfoot channel. He's encourage people, you know what I mean, to use Why Evolution is True. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir, for being there, and you're doing a great job, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. Take care. Why Evolution is True is an amazing book, by the way, by a biologist named Jerry Coyne, Coyne. Came out, I think, 3 years ago, and it's filled with amazing and factual information for those who say that evolution can't be true. It takes more faith to believe in evolution, all that stuff. Well, I encourage you to check that resource out. There's also, is it Daniel Prothero? Let me look. D-A-N-I-M. Evolution. I'll find out for you very quickly. He's got an entire, like a 90-minute lecture on YouTube that you should check it out. Yeah, Evolution, What the Fossils Say and Why It Matters. It's by Donald R. It's either Prothero or Prothero, Prothero. If you can look that up on YouTube, the guy's rapid-fire, bullet-by-bullet information showing you specific examples, transitional fossils, and proof in the fossil record of how evolution does work and can be observed. And it's a great ammunition if you find somebody who completely says, evolution's totally bogus. You can just bring it up and send them the link. Area code 505. Hi, who's this?
Amanda,
what do you got for me?
Well, I've been listening to your podcast for about a couple of months now, and I've been a big fan, so
thank you.
Can't believe I got in.
I'm glad you're here. What's going on, Amanda?
Well, I'm 23 years old. I've grown up a Seventh-day Adventist and crazy bunch of religious people, and they don't like science. So as I was growing up, none of this stuff made sense to me in the church. And I was at school, and, they have to have all these books with, evolution and all that stuff. So I went to the library, and I was just reading about it, and it was starting to fascinate me, and I'm like, oh, my God, what is this stuff? And then I started feeling really, really bad. So I was just discovering science at a young age, and I didn't really have anybody to turn to. So probably around 14, I started questioning my pastor, and he was like kind of angry with me that I was questioning, and he was telling me like, you're questioning, you're not supposed to question God and stuff like that. And I started feeling really terrible that I was questioning God. So like every time I would go to bed or watch TV that had a bad word or said Jesus' name in vain, I'd be like, I would think I was going to hell. So I just stopped believing in God, and I just learned about science. I read Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Carl Sagan stuff. I've been watching YouTube and all the atheist videos, and I've been an atheist for like maybe 6 or 7 years now.
And you have no regrets? Do you ever look back and say, I miss my happy little life?
No, I think most of my life I've been scared, and I think I got a slight post-traumatic stress because Seventh-day Adventists that we are living in the end times, and they think that this big giant trumpet is going to sound like out of nowhere. So when I was little, every time we lived by a train, and every time a train would come by and I would hear the train noise, I would start panicking because it sounded like a big trumpet to me. And I thought, I didn't pray, I didn't confess my sins enough, or I'm going to hell. All I could think about was me burning alive in hell, and that scared me.
How old were you at the time?
I think I was 12.
Doesn't that anger anybody else to hear that? I was the same freaking way. What they say is, look, God made hell, but he didn't make it for you. He'll send you there. But you don't really get sent there. You choose to go there by rejecting God. Do you see that it's sort of a chess game they play? They move the pieces around so that even though hell is a construct of God, it was his idea, eternal torment, torture forever, the flesh roasting from your bones. It wasn't created for you, but you might end up getting sent there by God, but it'll be your own fault. How the flip is a freaking 12-year-old supposed to process that? I'm glad you found your way out, and I hope that your life now is a happier life. Would you say so, or do you feel like you're living a more fulfilled, happy life?
I feel a lot more happier, and I think I've grown past the superstitions and the delusions and all that. I do have, some stress from just being grown up in that kind of church and stuff, but otherwise I'm pretty happy. So
I appreciate your call, Amanda. I'm glad you called in, and I'm glad you're listening, and you can just call us back anytime, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, take care. Forgive me, I don't have Shelley on the phone, so I'm going to do I'm going to do some fishing and find my guest. 111 on my switchboard. Who's this?
I don't suppose it's me, is it?
I don't suppose it is you, Phil. Man, if those of you behind the scenes could see the tap dance that he and I have been doing for the last 25 minutes to try to make this one conversation happen. I'm so sorry for the trouble, Phil, but I'm glad you made it through.
It's nice to know that someone who really can't do anything on a damn computer actually managed to do something. I did all this on my own, and it's the first techie problem I've solved on my own, and I'm very proud.
I'm so glad you actually get to participate in the show for which it is titled. I've got your name on the marquee.
I was just into that last caller, and I was thinking, I'm actually quite relaxed for this. And then when I was listening to that last caller, my heart rate started to go up, and I started to get angry because it's so frustrating.
Can you very quickly, though, tell me, do you come from religion? Do you come from some sort of a faith-based background? Can you relate personally to any of that?
No, not really. I remember, or at least I think I remember, it could be a false memory that we create when we get older, but I seem to remember looking at the moon and asking my mother what it was. And she'd call herself Church of England, but she never went to church. She never prayed or anything as extreme as that. In the UK, that's absolutely fundamentalist stuff if you pray. And she said that nobody knew, but some people thought God made it. And that was probably preschool if something like that happened. And then at school, of course, it was all, especially at Christmas and Easter, it was all Bible stories. And I don't know if I ever really believed it. I think I said prayers at night when I was a very little boy. But also while I was a little boy, I remember saying to my mother, is it okay if I don't pray? And is it okay if when we go to Grandma's house, I don't say that I say that I don't believe in God? And I was very, very young. And even then it was a burden to have to pretend that I believed something that I didn't. But my only affinity with people of organized religion is that I did have a deist phase. Just because I didn't think Christianity was real, that didn't mean to me that, the universe wasn't created. It just meant it was something else, and these were the simplistic stories that people had made up for it. So I have the understanding of the feeling of something there and being able to talk to it, and the way it relaxes you when you think it can hear you or that it's answering. So I understand that, but I don't understand somebody with pubic hair believing in Santa Claus.
Well, when you are indoctrinated from an early age, it is a difficult thing to come out of. And for me, it became a point where it just became convenient to sort of blink until the thought went away. Life is much more comforting if you feel that whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, has a divine puppeteer out there, and it's all going to be okay. And when you die, you're going to go to a happy place where everybody's going to be perfect and well, and you'll see everyone you've ever known. And it's easy to blink your eyes and blink away the inconvenient facts because you really want it to be true. But I had a comment on my YouTube page just this morning from someone who was like, I've never been happier in my life. They were a believer. And I'm like, well, what does happy have to do with it? What does happy have to do with whether or not it's true? You probably hear a lot of that as well. I have a wonderful, happy life in God. Do you hear that often?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me feel bad that I'm attacking it. The route that they've taken to their happiness, they can take a different route and achieve very similar happiness. And I'm not talking about atheism. You know, they could be a deist, I think, and have exactly the same feelings. But the problem is you don't have deism isn't ritualized the way that organized religions are. It seems that all the religions that I don't have objections to aren't as formal, and they don't have the rituals. The rituals are what sort of get these people into the emotional state, wherein they can say quite honestly to themselves that they do believe. You know, hallelujah, I'm here in church, it's Sunday afternoon, the music's going, all the arms are in the air, that girl over there's crying, and I feel like crying, and I'm going to cry, and right now, I believe. And then I think, you know, you have to correct me, Seth, on how this works, but psychologically, I think the songs die down, everyone leaves the church, they've got this almost post-sex satisfaction, and then they go home, and then slowly the real life encroaches in, and then when the question of belief comes in during the week, before they get back to the church and have another fix next week, I think what happens is if I ran into you on a Wednesday and said, do you believe? You say yes. But I think that's based on the memory that you did believe in the church on Sunday. At that actual moment, I don't know how much certainty is in you.
You've struck a nerve that I think that's an accurate observation. From my perspective, a great example is when we used to go to, I don't know what they have in your part of the world, but here in the Midwest in America, the phenomenon known as the Christian concert is very popular. Yeah. And what they have is these very popular Christian. I could do a whole show on Christian music groups. But they come and they do a live show, and it's crazy. I mean, you know, they've got the big stage and the smoke and the lights and the lasers and the soft music, and there's you know, the swelling of the music, and then the soft songs and the altar call at the end, and they call everyone forward, and people are weeping and they accept Jesus, and then they go home. Well, once the euphoria wears off and real life sets in, they still live their lives as if there is no God. If they're in a car accident that night, they don't stop and pray for God to rescue them. They call 911. They still live as if the solutions are human solutions, even though they continue to invoke God. Now, what drives that? Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's something else.
What do you think would happen if they had a car crash during the church service when everyone's doing the hallelujah?
Look, we live in a cult. We just had a series of tornadoes drop church roofs on people, you know. I mean, hundreds dead, and people are still, thank you, God, thank you that it wasn't worse. Thank you that one life was saved. We're in a town where another 100 were killed. And I don't know if this is a blind spot. I don't know if it's some weird rationalization where whatever the answer is, it has to make sense in the God. You know, it all has to fit the God puzzle. I don't know. I'm not sure I understand what drives it. I can't get past it. On my Facebook page this week, there was a young lady who I went to school with like 25 years ago, and she posted that her father was going in for like bypass surgery, just very, very high risk surgery. Well, her first inclination is to ask everyone for prayer. And litany after, responses came in. I'm praying, and I finally couldn't take it. And politely, because I know this is a very hard thing for her, I said, don't forget to thank the trained human physicians who are actually going in to solve the problem. You would think I had stepped on the grave of her dearest relative by insisting that science should be acknowledged and thanked as much or more than any deity. I don't know. Do you have anything like that in your culture, or most people where you're at secular, and it just doesn't work that way?
Well, all my friends, bar one, are extremely non-believing. In society as a whole, you'd only really encounter a sort of a literalist, fundamentalist type attitude in a city centre on a Saturday afternoon with you just follow the sound of tambourines if you get the idea. It's not terribly offensive. the only experience I had was a lady at work who used to do prayer meetings at lunch, and she believed that the dinosaurs were shapes put into the rock to shake, or rather to test the faith, if you like. And that was my first face-to-face, and I was about mid-20s then. So that was nearly a quarter of a century ago, and that's the last time I encountered that level of denial. I think when you talk about just putting that fairly innocuous comment that you put there, which, you know, when you said that you'd asked this girl to, you know, give the doctors, the surgeons, some thanks, I thought that you were going to get the response, of course. But obviously you got something totally different. And the only way I can interpret the difference between the reaction I think you should have got for saying that and the reaction that you actually got, if you imagine that you've essentially attacked their hope. By saying what you said, in actual effect, psychology, somewhere in the screwed-up wiring of the other person's mind, your message got diverted straight from their intellect to their emotions, and you were attacking their hope. It doesn't even reach the brain. They just react as if you've attacked their hope. And that's the only thing that can explain why people were giving you that pretty incredibly rotten feedback.
Well, and I wasn't, honestly, I feel it is improper to trample on someone else's hopes. It was an uninvited comment. Obviously, it was something where I didn't say, hey, all these prayers are worthless, thank a doctor. I just reminded them in a positive way, thank a doctor. But you're absolutely right. It was interpreted as an attack upon their faith. And the responses were like, well, who created doctors? God did. Who gave them the capacity to learn? God did. Who gave them the educational resources for them to go to college and learn all these things about science? Who created science? Who created the ability to invent the scalpel? I mean, these are the acrobatics that the apologist, the armchair apologist, will do to make sure that God
explain the reaction.
Well,
I don't think that explains the reaction. Even if they think as you think, it should still be, of course, I thank the surgeons. What sort of person do you think I am?
Let's talk about you and your video, Science Saved My Soul. Do you ever take any heat for, I know you do it as a play on words, but for using the word soul, for using any religious terminology? Do the purists come after you?
Yeah. Well, I don't even think, I think a lot of people watch videos, and I've done it myself. If I'm watching someone that I must admit that I don't particularly like and would not buy a beer for, if I'm listening to someone like that, if they use a sentence out of place, if they use a wrong word, I feel the muscles in my arm start to move towards the keyboard and criticise them. But then I think, well, that's so childish because I've seen it happen to me. You know, when you're making videos, you misplace a word sometimes. So I know that a lot of people will object pettily. You know, an awful lot of people will object pettily. But with that particular criticism, all I have to do is refer them to a line in the video which says, if I have something that can be called a soul. And that excuses the use of the word soul, but people don't hear that. They just see the title and start typing.
I am guilty, and I'll use the word guilty. I'm guilty of creating videos that attempt to reach people beyond the cerebral. I'm one of those people that I can read facts in a book, but when I watch a video, I want to be touched on multiple levels, and that includes the use of storytelling tools, as I see that you have used in Science Saved My Soul and other work. I mean, you use music, you use a poetry of language to sort of engage the viewer beyond 2 + 2 = 4. Are you ever accused of manipulating? Are you accused of being religious in your approach to this subject?
Well, it's kind of pointless when anyone accuses me of it when I admit it openly in several of my early videos. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Emotional manipulation, fight fire with fire. But the trick is, I don't lie. I make mistakes, but even when you're describing something poetically, as long as you're staying rigidly to the facts, in poetic language, yeah, of course, that's part of any art, if you want to call it art. Although there's manipulation, I think the direction I'm trying to point people towards, it's a perspective. It's a way of seeing the world without lying to yourself, without deluding yourself, without false promises. If you compare what I'm trying to do to what the religious try to do with some of their emotional tricks. I mean, let's put it this way. I'm not doing a video called "You'll Go to Hell If You Don't Believe in Stellar Nucleosynthesis." So I'm using techniques that are similar to the religious, but I'd like to think that the actual factual content is completely different, as in there is some.
I don't have a problem with using storytelling tools and production tools to make what I consider to be a solid piece, a factual piece, or a solid argument, a solid opinion, more compelling. I honestly, when someone watches a video and they see, you know, for example, I had a couple on camera. There was a young lady who was Catholic and her husband was Pentecostal, and they had each come from these very polarized religious homes and had gone on their own journeys to apostasy, to reject it all, and be ostracized by family. And it was a very emotional story. They were talking about how they worried about being thrown out of their homes. They worried about being sort of excommunicated from the ones they loved the most. It was a very, very touching story. Were there a lot of emotions in play? Yeah. But it was a human experience, a very real experience, and every piece about it was absolutely true. And I'm not ashamed of that, but I know there are a lot of people out there that believe that you and I should only be speaking about blocks of facts presented clinically, very sterilely. And when I saw Science Saved My Soul, I remember thinking, I was just struck by the freaking poetry of it. It really is a beautiful video.
Well, that actually happened. I could take you to the spot. These ideas are very, very complex, mainly because of the involvement of emotion. And sometimes when you're trying to explain something very, very complex to someone, or especially if you're trying to describe a feeling, you can only do it in a story or in a, obviously ultimately flawed analogy of some kind. You've got to take the place to the perspective where they can see what you want them to see, and facts and figures just don't do that. My friends were saying when that video went up that they all knew it was going to be very, very popular. But I must admit, it was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought it to be one of my better ones, but I didn't think it did quite get the attention that it got. And I'm labouring under the pressure of that now because I want to match it. I'm getting a lot of people saying, "Oh, why have you stopped making videos? Why don't you make videos anymore?" Well, I do. I make videos all the time. It's just that there's no point in putting them up if they're not at least an attempt at something like that.
Well, many people, I think, it's easy for someone to stand on the sidelines and say, make more videos. But to be in the production room, to write the scripts, to edit for content, to assemble all the multitudes of visuals, to put together a cohesive piece on top of a life you're already living, a busy life, it's much easier said than done. Phil, if you have a few moments, I'd like to maybe go to the switchboard and bring some callers in. I think they have some questions and comments for you. Does that work?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Area code 520. Hi, thanks for waiting. You're on with The Thinking Atheist. And who's this?
Hi, my name is Alexander Minter. Am I coming through?
You sure are, Alexander. You like Alex or Alexander?
Alex works. It's fine.
What's going on, Alex? What do you got for us?
Why do you think, for example, I have a bunch of friends, some of them are Mormon, Catholic, etc. Why do you think people who cling to various faith beliefs, but obviously, especially with my friend groups, I'm an atheist and they're still hanging out with me and we make jokes all the time and all that sort of stuff. Why do you think these groups cling on so fervently when presented with, and I mean really thorough evidence, regardless of circumstance, regardless of positions? I mean, especially my Mormon friend, he'll argue with me for hours about how my cited sources, etc., are not exactly to par. I don't really understand how he does this.
Are you asking us why otherwise rational people can believe in God? Is that where we're coming from?
Yeah, that's essentially what I'm coming from, is why they believe in God and why they have a tendency just to ignore sources.
Phil, do you have a comment on the subject?
When you were talking, I was just thinking instincts always, well, not always, but quite a lot, will override intellect, which is why a lot of rich men go for a lot of women that their intellect knew that they shouldn't, but their instincts took over, and that was that. You never underestimate the power of instinct. When you're having these discussions with your friends, inside them, their minds might go with you a certain way, and then it starts to get uncomfortable. And then I think some kind of fear or uncertainty, probably uncertainty rather than fear, starts to creep into them, and they start to emotionally react. So when you're saying to them, essentially, why don't you just try and see my viewpoint for a second? I think in essence you're actually saying to them, would you like to swap planets? Because they know that to do that, suddenly they're going to have to see everything totally differently, absolutely everything. Not an object in their life will seem the same if they go and entertain the idea of thinking like you. And I think in essence, if you imagine what it would take to make you sure enough to step onto another world, that's pretty much the evidence you're going to have to provide them. All you can do is provide them with the information, and then I'm a firm believer that, and I remember this from my own experience, because when I finally dropped the God idea, I realized it was nothing I thought that day was a thought that I hadn't had before. But on that particular day, they all clicked. So all you can do is plant these ideas into their head and wait for the possibility that they have that day. All you're doing is planting seeds, and that's all you can do. No one's going to step onto another world just because you ask them to.
Alex, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it so much.
Take it easy.
Take care. Michael Shermer has a book called The Believing Brain. And an excerpt says, we form our beliefs for a variety of subjective, personal, emotional, and psychological reasons in the context of environments created by family, friends, colleagues, culture, and society at large. After forming our beliefs, we then defend, justify, and rationalize them with a host of intellectual reasons, cogent arguments, and rational explanations. Beliefs come first. Explanations for beliefs follow, which may help to explain why someone like Francis Collins, head of the Human Genome Project, can look in our own DNA and see common ancestry and still believe in God and the Bible. The two seem irreconcilable, but I guess the brain can sort of compartmentalize one and the other. It's a strange thing.
Well, it's recorded in history. I'm not so sure about Newton, but I know for a fact that Michael Faraday, the guy who figured out electricity, or at least discovered the connection between electricity and magnetism, which linked electromagnetism into one force, he wrote a letter, or rather he received a letter whereby somebody said, how do you have these Quaker ideas, or Sam Dominion ideas, I think he was, how do you have those ideas along with your physics? And he said, I simply don't think about the two at the same time. and I also know a girl in Pennsylvania who got exactly the same response when her Christian physics teacher refused to get involved in a discussion about Big Bang physics. Because he knew about it, and she wanted to know about it, and he was a Christian. She was just asking him, and he says, I don't... When she sort of pointed out that this was against Scripture, he says, well, one Scripture and one science, and he literally said, I don't think about them at the same time, which I think is extremely honest, but at the same time, not rational, really. There's a level of truth-seeking, I think, in atheists that isn't in believers. I'm not saying that believers can't step out into the world and look for truth, but I honestly think the believer steps into the world looking for God. And I think if you're looking for God, or a God, or some gods, you'll find them. Somewhere, if you keep looking hard enough, you'll find something that fits what you were looking for. But I think the real truth seeker just goes looking for the truth.
Area code 310. Hi, thanks for waiting. Who's this?
Hello, my name is Spencer Sims, and this is so cool because this is my first time actually listening to the show, and it's very awesome.
Thank you for calling. What do you got for us?
Well, I just wanted to say that I am a Christian. I just came into the faith. I'm 20 years old right now. I was a non-believer in everything up until probably like 10th grade or whatever. But why I called was because I'm also a Seventh-day Adventist, she was like your first caller. And she said some things which are quite inaccurate in terms of what the Seventh-day Adventist religion actually teaches. Like, for example, we don't teach in an eternal burning torment hell with a God who would do that. And nor do we teach that one day we're walking around that there would be a great loud noise and stuff like this out of the blue nowhere. So I enjoy the discussion and things like this. And
does your faith embrace the scriptures?
Does my faith embrace the scriptures?
Do you believe in the Bible, the literal Holy Bible?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you embrace the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't believe in eternal torment?
Exactly. Actually, it says in Isaiah 33, verse 10, who could dwell in eternal burnings? It's actually the righteous. So that's prescriptive language. But we believe that at the very, very end of time, that people will actually burn up, those who don't put their faith in Christ. We don't believe in eternal, like who will burn you and then make you die a little bit and then burn you again.
So it's a one-time kind of a cremation. You go in, you get burned, and then you're just ash.
Yeah, eternal life can only be gotten through Christ. So if you're continually burning and burning and burning and stuff, you're basically eternally alive. And, we believe that that's just one way how the devil confuses things to make people actually believe in eternal burning torment hell. Yes. We don't believe that.
Even though the scriptures talk about everlasting fire, the fire is everlasting, but your torment is not.
Well, there's one example of eternal fire in the scriptures, and that is with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And as you know, people can't not even sure where Sodom and Gomorrah is right now. We believe that eternal fire, it burns up basically what it touches, but it eventually itself burns out.
Phil, do you want to chime in on the concept of a temporary hell, or at least a temporary hell experience for the human?
Well, I was just trying not to laugh over the last thing. I'm sorry, Spencer. An eternal fire that eventually burns out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yes.
I don't know. I don't know what to say. You say you're 20.
Excuse me?
And you were an atheist. You say you're 20 years old now, and you were an atheist. When did you start?
Yes, I was, yes.
What changed you?
Well, basically, the entire idea of prophecy, and I encourage you guys to look into the Seventh-day Adventist eschatology. We basically take a historicist view of prophecy, which is that prophecy is not just all in the past and it's not just all in the future, but that history is basically prophecy being fulfilled. And I went to Islam to try to find even a similar same sort of thing. Couldn't find it there. Couldn't find it in many other places. And that, in a combination of other different reasons, including evolution, sort of caused me to
prophecy? What's
really
the most
wonder.
chilling prophecy you've got? What's the one that rocks your world?
The one that really rocks my world is the 490-year prophecy. And
what's that?
Well, to explain that, it would take like a lot of time. I don't want to take up all the time on the show.
Doesn't this seem like an unbelievable tap dance? Look, eternity in the balance, right?
Yes.
Eternity is in the balance.
Yes,
God created us like we are sheep, right? We're insects. We could never totally understand the mind of God, right? So what he wants to do, what an omniscient, benevolent, caring God would do then, is to take these insects who will never understand God and to make the message unmistakable. It is on him to make sure that he is perfectly clear. What he has you doing is parsing scriptures like Matthew 25:41. Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. You're now saying it's okay that he burns people to a pulp, because once he burns them, he doesn't resurrect the flesh and burn them again for eternity. Does anyone else see the equivocation that's taking place?
Spencer. I have a question for Spencer. Spencer, how many? Let's say there's 7 billion people on the planet.
Okay.
How many of those 7 billion do you think would qualify for your version of hell?
Would qualify for my version of hell?
If it happened right now, and the decision's made right now.
Probably maybe 5 billion of them.
Okay, 5 billion people. That's okay. I'm not worried about the figure. 5 billion people. And you love your God, yes?
Yes.
So have you ever spent 30 seconds trying to imagine what the sight, the sound, and the smell of 5 billion people burning would be, right? And you love the entity that could prevent it.
Yes. Well, who could prevent it? I mean, yes, he could prevent it, yeah.
Okay, so you love the entity that would do that. Have you spent 30 seconds really imagining it? I'm not talking about 10 seconds. In fact, go mad. Spend 5 minutes really trying to imagine being out in a large, large field with piles and piles and piles of doctors, writers, musicians, healthcare workers. I mean,
relatively quote-unquote good people, yes.
Yes, and you look. I just cannot understand it, Spencer. We may as well be on different planets. How can you love that? Can't you give up eternity? I mean, I would give up eternity to not love that.
I mean, it's something that every Christian has to deal with, and if I'm working with people, right, and if I know that this is their future, and I'm going to close up the gospel inside of me and be like, oh, well, I don't want to say anything because they might get offended, then it really shows what love I have, because if I don't have the love to tell you about how I could save you from this potential future, then I think Christians who do not profess their faith to people who might not know about it yet, I think that they are the ones who are really the devil, because they do not take the time to even love their neighbor enough to tell them about the message. So yes, this God that I serve is an all-loving God, but He's also a just God, and He's
I've
also
heard that.
God.
I have heard that one before.
Yes, yes, you probably have.
If somebody steals something tomorrow, Spencer, can I pour petrol over their head and burn them? If I see somebody steal, I don't know, a tube of toothpaste from a shop, you would have some sympathy with me if I poured petrol over their head and set light to them.
Wait a minute, if you poured gas on somebody because he stole a pair of toothpaste?
Yep.
No, I mean, no, that's cruel.
Of course it's cruel. But your standard for morality and judgment changes for God. You excuse Him. Look, how many were burned alive in the ovens of Auschwitz, and you're horrified. But the idea of Yahweh burning people alive temporarily or for eternity, for you is perfectly rational. He's a God of love, but of course He's also just.
Well, I think you're oversimplifying the situation here. And
no, you're overcomplicating it.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Spencer, but you are overcomplicating it massively.
Well, because it's a very I study theology and computer science at my school, and and when we talk about this, it's not simple, black and white. It's a lot of gray area, and it's a very complicated matter because you're dealing with billions of people, hundreds of thousands of situations and chances, and you're basically dealing with people here. So it's not a simple.
You just made my argument for me, Spencer. You just verbalized what I've been trying to communicate. Billions have been excluded from the opportunity to gain eternal bliss and happiness from a God who supposedly loves them more than anything else in the universe. Billions have been excluded because the argument is too complex. It requires a lesson in apologetics. It requires the right translation of the right scripture, written at the right time, interpreted by the right expert, and debated on shows like these. What about the people who simply aren't able to receive this information? They're pretty much screwed. Well, thank you, God.
No. Well, I can only speak from a Seventh-day Adventist theological viewpoint of the Bible, and we have these terms called the invisible church and the visible church. We believe that the invisible church because there's many people all throughout the world who have never heard the gospel, who will probably never hear it. And these people, we believe, are judged according to basically their own belief system and morality. And we believe that everybody innately knows what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. And special revelation, or revelation that comes from the scripture, is to be used in conjunction with natural revelation that we see from society, from our daily lives, from nature. And
well, whatever you do, then, don't tell these people the Jesus story, because if they don't hear it, they're saved anyway. If you tell them, now you've put the burden of hell on their plate. You should leave them ignorant.
Yeah. Some people do argue that, and but the Bible itself commands us to tell people all over the place.
Spencer, I've been with you for about 15. I got to move on to some other calls.
Okay, thank you. I love this show.
Honestly, it's gutsy for a theist to call and make an argument on this show, and I do appreciate that about you very much.
I just wanted to correct the lady before who said stuff about the FA Church. That's all. But thank
you so much, Spencer.
Thank you for being civil too.
Before I move on, any other thoughts, Phil? Now that you've had a chance to digest the moment.
Well, I really do think I must complete my spaceship. I think I've got to get that built pretty quick. I've got to get off this rock sometime, I think.
Let's try Adam, who's calling in via Skype. Adam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you for calling. What's up?
Well, thank you. I've been listening for a few months now, and I really love your show. And
thank you.
I just wanted to talk about, I was kind of raised in a Christian family, I think, which is a lot similar to your kind of story, where I was raised up as an evangelical, and I was one of those Jesus camp children. Not in the movie, but I'd been to things that were like that, and that's what the churches I went to were like. But in the past few years, I've become like an atheist through just, I love history, so I've been like discovering and looking, and you can see the disconnects and the different cognitive, logical fallacies that occur because of, there's just differences and discrepancies between what religion says and what, different accounts say. In this last year, I took a philosophy class, and I'm going to be a senior in high school. And I think this is a real good, example of, how you can just deny the truth, and, how I think especially that self-realization is, how you get to people. And there's these people in my philosophy class. There was one named David, and he's an ex-Mormon, and he's gay. And he could sit there and he could argue and we'd talk. And this guy's just one of my role models. And then there'd be another kid who is just this Christian. He sat there and just blasted through every little thing we did in our philosophy class. And I'm just like, how can you do that to yourself? Do you feel that the way to get to those people to, introduce that idea of doubt, is that the way to go about trying to help people and doing what we can? Because I've always been frustrated with, how to tell my friends how to help them.
Well, did you want me to answer because I come from a religious background, or do you want Phil to chime in first? Phil, you want to jump in?
I think I'd like to hear your answer, Seth.
Well, I can only say how it worked with me. For those who don't know my story, I'll spare you the details, but I come from a devoutly religious background. My parents both trained theologians, Christian school, Sunday church, the whole thing. And no one could have come to me and said, evolution makes sense, it is true, and I would have received it at that point in my life. No one could have come to me and said that the Big Bang is true, because I had already made up my mind. Much of that was childhood indoctrination. Quite frankly, you take a child when they're young and you pound them with so much information and tell them it is fact, 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 and don't you dare question God, and then they play the hell card. Hell's a real place. You don't want to go there, do you? So what happens is it closes off the question, the part of you that wants to ask. You become afraid. And I think what helped me, honestly, is that I came to a point finally in my life when I was ready to start asking the questions, when I began to become honest with myself that I knew I wasn't satisfied with the religious answers. I had heard many of the secular arguments to an extent where I knew I could sort of reach out and start grasping onto those leads. And I think that's how most people are. You and I are having this discussion now in the hopes that there is someone listening in the wings who may disagree, who may be someone like Spencer who thinks we're all misguided and misled, but maybe on some level they might be thinking, 10 years from now they might be thinking, and this kind of conversation helps to give them the tools they need. So when they start asking those questions internally, they can then reach out and find the answers. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate your call, Adam. Very, very much.
Thank you.
I don't know. Richard Dawkins had a quote. He was interviewed by National Geographic. Let me just say this, give you this paragraph. The question was, what do you think of people who adhere to the biblical idea that the earth is less than 10,000 years old and that we are all God's creation? Richard Dawkins replied, quote, anyone who still believes that the world is less than 10,000 years old, as many creationists do, the best excuse for them is lamentable ignorance. Anyone who is not ignorant and has been shown the evidence and still believes this, then they must have something wrong with them. To give you an example of the magnitude of the error, to believe the world is less than 10,000 years old, when in fact we know the world is 4.6 billion years old, is equivalent to believing the width of North America from New York to San Francisco is less than 10 yards. So to believe this, you have to be either incredibly ignorant or insane. Harsh words, Phil. Do you have a thought about the good Richard Dawkins comment?
Well, yeah, he underestimated it. Because the universe was, according to the creationists, the universe was created at the same time as the Earth. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, or 4.5, whichever, but the universe is 13.7. So the actual gap is 10,000 years against 13.7 billion. So they're estimating that distance down to a few inches in the south of thing. Ignorance is the enemy. I would just, if there is anyone out there who is feeling in a curious mood, just think about one thing that happens in the world, anything, and try and go on the internet and search how that thing happens. That it could be the wind, it could be lightning, it could be why the sun rises pink. But if you research any natural phenomenon deep enough to try and understand how that happens, you will get an explanation that you understand, that makes sense, but it won't make sense in light of Scripture. And that's the problem. You can either then just give up, or you can try and actually understand.
I had an email from Mike in Illinois for you, Phil. He said, you do incredibly polished documentary-style videos. How long does it take you to put them together? And what tools do you recommend for other YouTubers who want to try their hand? You have any recommendations?
Well, I use Sony Vegas Pro 8 for the editing. I use Mozilla Firefox with Download Helper to get hold of video clips that I need. Software-wise, whatever works. It's unfortunately, I'm having a lot of problems. I'm trying to do HD videos. People say, why don't you do HD, Phil? And my reply is, I'm trying, you bastards. I can't kick me on my own. The last 3 videos were attempts at HD. How a video that's only 10 minutes long can be nearly 300 megabytes and not HD? It looks great on my machine, but I can't get it to upload. So anyone listening who can give me some tips on how to use Sony Vegas Pro 8 to get HD videos out of it onto YouTube, I'd very much appreciate it. Stick at it, I'd say. I think what stopped me from going into the big production numbers was not knowing what to do, and the day I gave up was the day I started to actually get it together. Because if you just play around trying to make the videos on your own machine and try and make something that you like, your first attempts won't please you. But if you just keep going, if you keep asking around and getting little tips, you'll be able to improve on graphics quality and versatility, what you can get, what you can use, and just keep trying.
The analogy that I use is playing the piano. Before you're able to play, you're going to have to suck at it. You're going to play chopsticks before you play Chopin. It's just the way it is. And Phil's absolutely right. Another thing I think is you need to be aware of your own abilities. There are many people, quite frankly, who will try to do anything, whether it's play the piano or play a sport or, work on a car or produce videos, who will never have the innate ability. They just simply are not wired. They don't have the gift. They don't have the storytelling ability. They don't have the production abilities. They just aren't wired to do it. So it doesn't matter how much training they get, how many college hours they get, how many hours they are mentored. It doesn't really matter. You have to know where your strengths are. Conversely, I have seen people who've just picked up an editor or a camera or a microphone and just been able to do it. They've always had a knack. And I think you need to know where your gifts are. It's obvious that Phil has a knack for being sort of this guy who can communicate beyond the cerebral to be able to put something together that touches people. I think you have to know what your gifts are. I had another message in from a user. Do you feel as if being an atheist has made you a better person? Would you agree with that? Yes, no?
Yes. But then again, it's very difficult for me because I was born nice, baby. So, I mean, I was a nice kid when I believed. I was a nice deist, and I was, according to most of the comments that I've received in my life, a fairly nice atheist. So I don't think you change. You see, it's not exactly nature against nurture, but I think a nice theist will be a nice atheist. A kind, brave, caring, altruistic theist will be exactly the same as an atheist. No difference whatsoever. It's their nature.
You're based in London, aren't you?
I'm not, but I'm not telling you where I'm based.
Well, I'm looking for a region. What I'm trying to find is that you are
UK.
that the culture there is not hostile to the atheist like it is here in America. Is that accurate?
No. Yeah, I would have to try and quantify something like that. I imagine walking down the high street on a Saturday afternoon, stopping people and just saying, I'm an atheist. Most of them would just shrug and go, yeah, so what, so am I. I think you'd have to ask maybe 100 people or more before you found someone who'd say, well, you're going to hell, buddy. It's really not. The only thing that worries me about the UK and religion is a certain influx of evangelical methods at what used to be innocuous C of E churches. That's Church of England. You know, the Church of England, they don't go looking for converts or anything like that. Their doors just open on a Sunday and you can go in and that's it. But they've started to adopt something called the Alpha Course. It's a kind of a British version of I've seen videos of the course and I have to describe it in a way which will make Christians want to punch the screen. It's brainwashing. It's breaking minds down using philosophical non-arguments, which we see all over YouTube and elsewhere. And if you get the average to the atheists on YouTube, these things are useless. They're worse than useless. When you use these philosophical arguments, you announce that you're really not a deep thinker because they're so easy to punch holes in. But the average person on the street isn't prepared for that. The first time they hear it, they're going, yeah, that makes sense. And they haven't got the science to stand up against it. It's not Britain now that I worry about. It's Britain in 10 or 20 years. Tony Blair kind of started the rot because he introduced something called faith-based schools. And as far as I'm concerned, that is sowing the seeds of division into the future until those things are got rid of. I couldn't think of anything more disastrous for the future of a country than to have faith-based schools.
Do you have a high influx of Islam? We read articles here in the States about the tolerance that the UK has shown for Islam. Are those accurate? I mean, is that a problem? Is it something that's on your radar?
I'd have to say yes. If I went down into the street and I held up a banner that said, behead everyone who insults Richard Dawkins, I might get arrested. If I held up the same banner saying anyone who insults Islam should be beheaded, I don't think I would be arrested. Depending on the setting. I'm sure it's been exaggerated. I think it's hard to say what impression you're getting pulled out of the air.
What I have read is that there's a tolerance. You come in, have your own little pods, your own subculture, don't necessarily exist or mend or blend or assimilate into ours. Just be your little Muslim sort of a church culture there. And what happens is all these subcultures have all of a sudden grown, and in 10 years there is a real worry about the political and personal ramifications of Islam in non-Islam countries.
I think that's a valid concern. There's all sorts of people all over the interwebs right now going, oh, Phil, don't say that, but I'm sorry. There are things that are allowed. There's a place in London called Tower Hamlets, and there's stickers all over the place, this is a gay-free zone. And to me, that's the thin end of the wedge, and the police don't seem to be doing a great deal about it. There's little instances. I'm not a doom and gloomer, because I'm aware that the absolute extremists are a tiny minority of Islamic society. But the problem is that the wider Islamic society has a disproportionate, I don't want to call it, maybe sympathy is the right word, a disproportionate sympathy with, you see these people who are putting up the gay-free zone stickers, are we classing them as fundamentalists? Because as Sam Harris says, those are the fundamentals of Islam. It's in the Quran that you don't make friends with non-Muslims. Now, some Muslims, as with some Christians, can reinterpret that any way they like. They can completely ignore it if they like. But the words are there, and if they're read with a view to wanting to believe that that's how to interpret it in a literal sense, then it will be. So I'm afraid there's division written into it. I don't know if it's a financial thing, an economic thing, but they do tend to stick together. They don't tend to have social evenings with non-Muslims, I'm afraid. And to be fair, part of the problem is also that non-Muslims don't invite Muslims to social occasions. So it's a two-way block. I don't want to be at a party where someone's looking at the girls disapprovingly for having their hair uncovered, and I dare say they don't want me at their gatherings. I'm not sure if they have parties. It seems such a joyless religion. I mean, I don't want to go around to a house full of burqas. So I don't know how you get through it. Cultural integration is obviously the way to go, but what do you do when the two sides, for want of a better expression, don't want to integrate just on matters of personal taste?
Sure, it's easy to say, to understand and empathize and integrate, and it's another thing to actually see it done. Let me very quickly do one more phone call. Area code 407. You've been very kind to wait this long. Who's this?
Hey, it's Nam.
What's going on?
Nothing much. I woke up and had some breakfast, and then I realized there was a podcast today, so I was kind of a bit late.
Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yes, I have a question. Not too long, like, in the beginning of the school year, one of my friends, she said that she had, like, an out-of-body experience, in a dream, per se, where she saw this guy on the foot of her bed, and she's like, who are you? And the guy's like, I forget what because it was so long ago that she told me this, he said something about keep praying or something. What do you guys think about out-of-body experiences in general?
I think you just have the most eloquent answer we can give you.
I'm going to let me think about that one. All right, Nam. Thanks for the call. What do I think about out-of-body experiences? Honestly,
no, go on, Seth. I want an answer. I want an answer. What do you think about that?
I exist in a culture where personal experience is posited as truth every day. Well, people have personal experiences of all sorts of things. They've had visions and dreams, and people have seen everything from aliens to Elvis to dead relatives. Quite frankly, your personal experiences are not impressive to me. I must see something more. I must see something in the concrete and not just your own very subjective impression of what may or may not have happened. I've got to take one more. I can't finish on that one. Did you want to chime in real quick, Phil?
I just wanted to say that when I was 15, I played tricks on kids. And I once got some perfectly rational kids who knew me to swear at school that they saw a bat with a 15-foot wingspan. And it was actually the shadow of some stones going down a greenhouse roof. I know because I tipped them out of a can to do it. And perfectly rational people can see things that weren't there, and dreams can take on meanings beyond dreams. And if dreams are real, Scarlett Johansson should be aware that she's my girlfriend.
435, you're on with the Thinking Atheists. What's going on?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm on this. It's Benjamin, or Ben for short.
Let's do Ben, and let's move quickly. What do you got for us, man?
Well, I've only been an atheist for a very, very short while, like a couple of months. I just finally let go. I've watched yours and Phil Hellenes videos, and just finally said I'd had enough. But my question is, my parents, I finally told them that I don't believe anymore. And my mom keeps bringing it up every time I go over there, and she gets into tears. because, well, I'm of Mormon background, and, you know, she thinks she's failed me as a parent. And my dad, it's difficult to start conversations with him as well, because I can tell it's really eating him up. And my question is, what can I do or what can I say to comfort them, to help them?
I would just keep being the son that you always have been, and if the conversation comes up, just say, if God exists, do you think he burns good people? I know they'll have the scripture to throw against you to put, you know, to excuse it, but if they really do think about it, if there's a God, he's not going to be burning anyone just for not believing in him. It's just too childish, even on a human level.
I should tell you something, Phil. With Mormonism, they don't believe in the whole hellfire and brimstone doctrine.
Oh, right. So they're worried about just not having you in the. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just keep being a good son, and if they see a good God, they'll just have to put it down to that they're missing something. But if you're good, I can't believe that they're really, really in the long run going to believe. Mind you, I don't know. This is Seth's department. I can't imagine minds like that.
I believe that this decision has to be about you. Otherwise, you are merely an echo of what someone else believes. So if they are going to, as adults, have to respect the fact that you are now living in your own skin, you are not an echo of their belief or the belief of someone else, but you have added up the evidence and you are living a worldview that you have found to be true and right, and that's all you can do. Love them, be the best son you can, show them every compassion, show them attention, show them generosity, be gracious, magnanimous, don't be a doormat. But I think you can show them that the life of a skeptic and non-believer is a rich, wonderful, happy, fulfilled, meaningful life. And it won't happen overnight, but my hope is over the course of time, at least an uneasy peace will develop, and they will see that you're comfortable in your own skin, you are your own person, and they will respect you as an adult for doing that. Does that help?
All right. And just going to say one more thing, Phil. Your Science Saved My Soul was the first atheistic film YouTube video I ever watched, and that was actually the video that got me questioning everything more than ever, and I thank you for putting that up. Yeah.
Well, Ben, I think we better end the call before an old man starts to cry. That's a lovely thing to say.
Thank you very much. I've just got a couple of minutes left. Tell me about the content of the other videos you've done. Are they science-based? Are they observations about other things? I mean, what are you passionate about? What's your material about? And how do people find you on YouTube?
Well, they find me by the name, which is just search Phil, as in the short version of Philip, and then Hell, and then E-N-E-S. Phil Hell Ease. That should do that. I wouldn't know how to describe the videos. Anything that I think might show someone a point of view that they may not have considered. That's what I try to do, however I try to do it. Sometimes I tell stories, sometimes it's personal anecdotes, sometimes it's the big flash productions like Science Saved My Soul. I must admit I'm concentrating on the larger productions at the moment, but that means there's going to be a bigger gap between videos, which is a pain in the arse, but I just think there's more potential to reach people like that.
If I may, I don't want to do injustice to your material, but if I may quote from Science Saved My Soul, it said, "We were told long ago and for a long time that there was only the Earth and that we were the center of everything. That turned out to be wrong. We still haven't fully adjusted. We're still in shock. The universe is not what we expected it to be. It's not what they told us it would be. This cosmic understanding is all new to us. But there's nothing to fear. We're still special. We are still blessed. And there might yet be a heaven, but it isn't going to be perfect. And we're going to have to build it ourselves." That's amazing stuff, Phil, and I'm so glad you spent the last hour and 15 minutes with it. It's been a tremendous pleasure. Thank you.
I haven't stopped smiling throughout, sir.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.